All right, welcome to another episode of Unstoppable REI, and I'm here with my friend Sharon Vornholt. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
I love it. Okay, well, my last name Thibodeau. Since I was forever, people just massacre my name, so I always try to be careful. I want to make sure I pronounce names correctly. So anyway, well, thank you for your time. I know we tried a couple times to do this. I'm glad that we were able to connect up, and I'm just going to get right into it. So tell me your 30-second elevator pitch, kind of your story. Tell me how where it all started.
Well, growing up, my dad was a general contractor, and so I was the oldest of four kids. So by default, I was the best behaved, and I got to tag along with him.
Okay.
And that's where my earliest real estate interest came from. And fast forward years later, I owned and operated a home inspection business for 17 years,
Nice.
which means I met a lot of realtors. And one day, a realtor came in and said, "Do you want to go to a REIA meeting?" And I said something like, "What's a REIA meeting?" So from then, that was a long time ago, 1998. That's when I started in this business. And I started out being a rehabber and a buy and hold landlord. And then I became an accidental wholesaler long about 2008. We all know about that if you were around then.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, all right. So if you do, I mean, you've got quite a bit of experience, a lot of areas.
Mhm.
But just even before I get to the other questions here, tell me about the podcasting. Now, I don't know, one of our exchanges, you mentioned that it was I didn't know it's 400th, almost 400 podcasts. Uh, is it a podcast directed to real estate investors, or
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, it's called Let's Talk Real Estate Investing,
Okay,
which tells you what it's about.
that's right.
So
Yeah,
yes, so I started in 2003. I think I told you this. We had those of us that started back then had no clue what we were doing.
yeah.
There were no podcasting courses. There was very little on the topic, but I'm kind of like the person who jumps out of the airplane and grabs the parachute on the way out.
Right, right,
So,
right, right.
um, and I found out recently iTunes only indexes 300 of your podcasts. So I'm thinking back to the first 100, and I went, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
But the podcast, I started a blog, the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog in 2010, which was solely for the purpose of chronicling my journey.
Okay.
It was for no other purpose. People said, "Well, what was your plan to make money?" I didn't have one. It was
Okay.
just to tell what I was doing, the mistakes I did, and that sort of thing. And then in 2013, I added the podcast, and I've been doing it that way ever since. Just talk about things I know. I talk about things that have come up.
Okay.
I talk about books, they just all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But what I have found is that it is a great way to meet people
Right.
and learn from other people because we can't know everything.
That's right. That's right. No, and I love that too. That's what I've been finding. And of course, I'm just practically newborn compared to you. I think I've done like 30, maybe 40 of them. But yeah, it's a great way to meet people. So you mentioned an interesting thing. As far as advice, if somebody wants to get involved in real estate, they want to do what you've done. I mean, we'll get into how many properties you own or whatever, that kind of stuff. But if they want to get going, what advice would you give them about getting started?
Well, you have to take those first steps. You have
Yeah.
to invest in your education.
Okay.
You can get, well, probably the most valuable thing that you can do is find your local REIA, your Real Estate Investors Association, and join.
Okay.
If you live in a smaller town and they don't have a big association, and you can Google that National REIA, and you can find out where the meetings are closest to you, the National REIA meetings.
Okay.
But you can also go on to what you can get in meetup or things like that. There are small groups around that everybody can go to. So I would say learn there, learn from blogs, podcasts, and things like that.
Okay.
But at some point, you're going to have to drop some money and go to a conference, get
Yeah.
a coach, get a mentor. You can go along the free line so long, and then you just kind of hit a wall. But you have to first learn. But I would say though, don't just learn. You have to get to a point. I think it was about a year before I bought a property and did my first rehab. It takes a little while, but if you get too long down the road, you get into this eternal learning cycle.
That's right. That's right. That's right. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned, you know, you can do stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there for free, but you're gonna have to spend some money.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that people, by and large, you don't value things that you know, you value things more. You appreciate it more if you
Yeah.
spend some money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In fact, I was reading something very interesting about Tony Robbins. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan.
Mm-hmm.
And early in his career, he was, you know, people were coming to talk to him, but they weren't taking action on what he was saying. So he started charging $1 million for his one-on-one consultations, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously that worked and got people going. So yeah, you gotta spend some money, right, and you gotta take some action, like you said. So switching gears just a little bit here in terms of well, by the way, how long have you been investing?
Since not well 1998.
Wow, long time, long time. Okay.
Long time. Yeah, I've changed gears many times, but yeah, 1998.
Okay. So what would you say was your biggest failure? And what did you learn from that?
Well, I knock on wood when I say this. I've never lost money on a deal,
Oh, good for
but
you.
I had one that was I'll just say the realtor. Everybody made more money than me.
Okay.
It was complete inexperience. I did a rehab, one of my very first rehabs. The profit margin should have been about $14,000. It was a small, tiny house, but
Yeah.
we all know that's not big enough margin to take that risk.
Right.
What I didn't know was, and this was a realtor that I knew well because we did a lot of business with him in the home inspection company.
Okay.
I didn't know that it was a thing in my area to pay all the buyers' closing costs if they were a first-time home buyer.
Huh. Okay.
So by the time I paid the realtor fee and I paid the buyer's closing costs, the realtor made more money than me. We'll just say that.
Wow.
But the side story to that is I allowed that agent to bully me into a corner. See, what I should have said is, we'll raise the sales price of the house,
Sure.
and then I will agree to pay closing costs. But there was a very painful lesson for me. Once
Yeah.
again, I didn't lose money, but
Yeah.
I learned a lot of lessons about standing your ground,
Sure.
about restructuring the deal so that everybody gets what they want.
Yeah.
Because in the scheme of things, that was going to add almost nothing to that buyer's payment.
Sure.
But for me, it was a great big deal. But that's what I always considered that deal to be a failure, because I didn't anticipate what I didn't know. But you can't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you make the best decision you can with, you know, the information you have, and as you get more information, you make better decisions. But now, in that transaction, what role did you play? Were you was the agent listing the property for you, or were you buying it, or what?
He brought me a buyer. It was a sale. I knew that he was working with some first time home buyers. So I just called him and said, "Do you have any buyers, Dave?
Okay. Got it.
Do you have anybody looking for a property? Because I have the perfect first time home buyer property, completely rehabbed."
Got it.
So I was kind of blindsided by that one.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you on that. But like I said, it's a lesson learned. And but what now, interestingly enough, you said that how many years were you a home inspector?
17.
Okay.
I was only the owner. I did not crawl under. I did not crawl under.
Okay, you
anyone's
just owned the
house.
company.
I owned the company. Owned and operated the company. It was a family-owned business. So 17 years.
Okay. So I first got my real estate license in 1990. I don't still have a license, but for me, my experience with real estate inspectors is interesting because it was that it always seemed like they didn't feel like they were doing a good job unless they found something wrong with the property. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's a little bit of a stereotype, and I guess maybe it depends on the experience of the inspector too, because obviously if something's wrong, we want to know about it. But sometimes it's like, hey, you guys, it's a good house, good, But I never got that. They always, found, sometimes they were deal killers, and it could have. And if the inspector's saying something wrong, it's tough for anybody to kind of refute that.
I would like to talk about that because I think being a woman-owned company made a big difference. It was very difficult to find people that were technically competent. Understand, Rufus, that if we missed something, they were going to expect us to pay for it.
Okay.
That's why we couldn't overlook it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We had to report what we saw, but it's all, you had to find somebody who was technically competent and not going to kill your deal. So you had to have somebody
Got it.
with good communication skills.
Okay. Okay.
But we spent a great deal of time training people, and we would tell them, they would tell them at the site, we're not here to report on cosmetic issues, this and this and this. We're here to report on the structural integrity and mechanical systems in the roof and the big things. Now,
Okay.
we may point out other things, but
Sure.
those are things that if you want a brand new house, you should buy a brand new house.
Right.
This is a pre-owned home.
Right. Right.
And while we'll point them out, and my inspectors were very careful to say, these are things that are common to this age home. And
Got
they
it.
would tell them, if
Yeah.
you want a brand new house, then go over there and pay a whole lot more money and get a brand new house.
That's right.
But that was a common, it was a common complaint, but we tried very hard to not ever kill the deal and
Yeah.
to in fact get to the end of the conversation and say, these are all things that are expected in this age home. And this seller is not required to fix
Yeah.
cosmetic things and all of those things. We're just pointing them out to you so that you have a dollar amount, that down the road over time,
Yeah.
you can figure out what you need to fix.
Got it. And you know what? I think I probably was working with the wrong inspectors because they didn't explain it that way. The way that you articulate your job and setting proper expectations. I think that's the whole key.
That's the whole key.
You're right. I mean, this is not a brand new house. You want a brand new house? Go pay an extra $100,000 for that one. This, so there's gonna be some things wrong. We're pointing them out. So no, I sound like you did a great job.
Well, my inspectors were good. They could even get off a house that needed a new roof, and they could sell it that it was a normal thing. And it's the way it is. This house is this old, and the price is reflected. I talked to the realtor, and the realtor has reflected this new roof that's needed in the price of the home.
Sure, that makes all the difference. Is the proper expectations. I think it's great. So back to the investing here. What has been maybe your top 3 best resources that have helped you along the way as a real estate investor?
Well, my REI group for sure, because we have had anywhere from 400 to 700 members, probably got down to 200 or 300 at the height of COVID when we were doing everything on Zoom. But we have a varied group, a varied experience. And if you don't know something or you need to learn something, you can learn it in that group. Now, if you don't have that resource, then I would say go to blogs and podcasts and respected people in the business and start there and learn. But go to conferences. You can go to a lot of conferences for a couple $100.
Sure. Right. So those are great resources. What are you mentioned liking to read books. What are you reading right now? You reading anything good right now?
I just read a great book, and I'd like to tell you about it. It's called Who Not How. So it was written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. But it opened my eyes. And I would say if you're brand new and just getting started, just hear what I'm saying, because you're going to need this book. You know how we all try to figure everything out ourselves. So instead of trying to spend a month figuring out how to do something, maybe you could get a VA for $20 and they could just be your who.
Gotcha.
So it's Who Not How. And I love that book because it changes your thinking. But I love another author that I love is Mike Michalowicz.
Okay, never heard of him.
And I love him. He's written Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, Clockwork, but he wrote a new book, and I had him on my podcast a while back. It's called Get Different: Marketing That Can't Be Ignored. And it's specifically written for small businesses. So Get Different: Marketing That Can't Be Ignored. That's a great book.
Okay, fantastic. I have to check that out. I love books. So do you do like audiobooks, like Audible, or you actually read the books? Okay.
I read the books, but I'm a newbie to Audible. In fact, my credits are now. I listen to a lot of podcasts sometimes when I'm on the treadmill. Yeah. But I'm a newbie to Audible, and I'm going to see if I can listen to a book and get my fitness on at the same time.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I love both. I love listening, but I love still reading. I like having the physical book. The best case scenario for me, the best case scenario is to be looking at the book and listening to it. So it's kind of like having somebody read to me, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. But anyway, so what about as far as mentors? I mean, who were maybe the top 3 most influential people for you in business?
Well, my parents would be the top two because they were entrepreneurs.
Okay.
It was really my dad who taught me that nothing was impossible so long. It was not gender specific, which is where I came from, that belief.
Okay.
And I'm always singing to the choir that there's a place for women in this business
Yeah.
because they genuinely, for the most part, have never believed there was a place for them in this business. But I watched the struggles of my parents having being small business owners. So they had an enormous um, amount of influence on my life.
Sure.
But it would be hard for me to pick a couple of real estate and
Okay.
influencers. There are so many that have, each one has a little bit different thing to offer.
Okay.
But I would say find someone that resonates with you, that has the same core values as you,
Okay.
that has a message you can resonate with, and just learn from them.
Yeah, I agree with you that well, there of course are a lot more, there are more women, I mean more men than women, but a lot more
Mhm.
women are coming to the
Mhm.
forefront. And I love talking to women entrepreneurs because I mean when I'm talking to my wife, I mean my wife is like my coach. She's like my
Mhm.
mentor. I go to her for help. And when I'm asking her, sometimes we're just hanging out or whatever, and I'm like, honey, what are you thinking about? And she might ask me what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like one thing, like what are we gonna have for dinner? And I'm asking her,
Mhm.
what do you think about? She's thinking about like 1,000 different things. So how am I gonna do this and pay this
Mhm.
bill, do this. So I mean, women are so smart, and I've been trying to get more and more women on the podcast just because I want to elevate them, but also because you guys know so much, and I don't know. I mean, you seem to be way more advanced than men. That's what I think. I mean, I don't know. What do you, I mean, even you think about this in all seriousness. I mean, the maturity level,
Mhm.
even if I mean, like a 15-year-old girl has probably the maturity level of like a 30-year-old man or something. I mean, don't you think? You know what I mean? It's just like you guys are so advanced, and they're like, even though you
Yeah.
guys take a lot of flack, I mean, you
Yeah.
guys are. I mean, my wife had four. We have four children. They're all grown now. Four children with no medication. It's like, are you kidding me? I get a headache and it just lights out. It's everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so you guys don't get enough uh, publicity, and I think you need more. So I'm going to do what I
Well,
can to help.
I think traditionally, and think back to 25 years ago,
Yeah.
Rufus,
Okay.
there were virtually no women. If I looked around my REIA group, there were a handful,
Nobody.
mostly the wives of the men.
Okay.
So we were like a unicorn. And today, the past 4 or 5 years, there are resources for women
Sure.
they simply didn't exist. But I'll say this.
Okay.
So I work probates a lot, but I think this is true for all forms of real estate. I think women are uniquely suited for this business, and especially probates that require these conversations, because we're used to just being moms or dealing
Yeah.
with people and
Okay.
difficult situations, and we're used to we're good negotiators because we've been negotiating with children since they were toddlers.
Right. And
So-
husbands
and
too.
husbands.
That's right.
But I do think women are uniquely suited to this business, but I don't think they know it.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and I'm going to point that out more. But so interesting, so uniquely suited to any particular type of real estate strategy. In particular, you mentioned probate. I mean,
Probates. Yeah, I think they're uniquely suited, especially for probates. Now, you think about someone selling a house in probate, it's a legal procedure where they have to sell the house. And men, and I'm not saying bad things about men, but they
Yeah.
automatically jump to the side where I can't talk about death. Well, in reality, nobody's going to answer the door and say, let me tell you how my mom died. They're just not going to do that.
Right. Right.
But women can walk in the door. And what I think we're so good at is just meeting the person, really quickly assessing things, looking for visual clues and saying, tell me about your mom. I see you have a lot of cookbooks.
Yeah.
Was your mom the cook? Which opens the floodgates. Or
Gotcha.
the golf clubs over here. Was your dad the golfer? I
Yeah.
don't think men think the same way women do, but
They don't.
they don't. And it's not good or bad. Men are
Right.
hardcore negotiators,
Yeah.
but probates are a different animal,
Yeah.
where you have to be a really good listener. You have to be willing to go in and hear about all the Christmases and all of that. And then
Right.
you say, would you like to show me the house? And then by then you've built this rapport with
That's
them,
right. Sure.
which I think women just know how to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you're right. It's not good or bad, but it's just that
Yeah.
if that's if that's something that you're better at, then as part of the team, that's what you
Mm-hmm.
should handle. And so, but it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting you should mention that. This is totally off script, but one of my sons, I shouldn't even say this that loud, but we have 4 kids. Like I said, there's a potential relationship brewing here. And
Mm-hmm.
so we decided that my wife was going to be the one to talk to the person to find out kind of, what's going on. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
because the woman just has a better, I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
within 2-3 minutes, boom, we can know exactly what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so so you're right, but I never connected that to real estate and in that particular genre of real estate investing. And that's brilliant. But that's what I'm talking about. That's an insight that women have. And it's like, I don't know. We should help them to understand that more. Do you
Mm-hmm.
focus on helping women investors at all?
I do. Now I've got, I have a ton of men in my world because it's always been a male dominated field. And I like working with men because I find them to
Yeah,
be action takers, but I also find women to be better multitaskers.
absolutely.
If they have, for instance, children at home
Yeah.
and they need to get a direct mail campaign out or something, they know how to juggle.
Oh,
And I
totally.
don't, and I think men know how to juggle at work, but I think this dynamic of juggling between families, I think, well, it's just what women have always done
That's
more
right.
of. But I think women are good in almost any area of real estate. I don't think it has to be probates. I do
Gotcha.
think probates is a big one, but
Okay.
if conversely, a lot of men are hardcore negotiators, and that's not what I would do. It's not a skill that I have, like,
Okay.
just the really go for the throat type of negotiation. I'm not
Right.
good at that. I'm the first one to tell you. I'm the
Okay.
Libra poster child. I'm going to charm the house out of you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. But you do it works. I mean
Mhm.
that's I think in my experience this a really good salesperson, that process happens, um uh you fly kind of under the radar. I mean, it's like,
Mhm.
you don't even realize that that's what's happening. But like you
Yeah.
said, you go in, you see the cookbook, and you're talking about cooking and recipes. Next thing you say, show me the house. Next thing you know, they're signing the purchase agreement, and you
Mhm.
haven't said a word about all the other stuff because it's like, it's the emotion that
Yeah.
that really connects that. So I think that's
I,
important.
it's building rapport. You have to build rapport. So even
Yeah.
on that first phone call, you have to build rapport. But once you get to the house, this is the thing I know about marketing. So
Okay.
marketing is how you get leads, and
Right.
branding is why they choose you.
Okay.
So that is the thing to focus on. And when you get there and you have found a way to be different, here's the other thing about marketing: different
Okay.
is better than better.
Nice. I like that.
So you don't have to be, you can't go in and compete on price all the
Yeah.
time,
That's
because
right.
then the lowest price is going to get the house if that's what you're selling.
Right.
But if you're selling, I'm Rufus and I can do this for you. And Sharon, she can't do this for you.
That's right.
If you can be different, you can get the deal regardless of price.
I love
Now it
that.
can't be a huge difference, but
Yeah.
you can still pay more or
Sure.
pay less for the house
That's right.
and get the deal. It doesn't become about price and just price at that point. So
Yeah.
different is better than better.
Sure, because I think the different is a part of value. You're offering
Hmm.
value, and so that really is
Hmm.
is the key. But I love what you're saying about that. So let me ask you this: what is a common myth? Maybe just one common myth in real estate investing that you can debunk.
That's an easy way to make money.
Okay.
Real estate is hard. It's consistent.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. You have to be determined. I mean, some strategies are easy. Like if you can wholesale a house, that's easy. If you have a buyer's list,
Yeah. Sure.
if you're brand new and you want to wholesale a house, who's your buyer?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't know, but it's wealth with real estate is built over a long term. Your experience is built over years,
Yeah.
and you get better every year. So you just have to understand that it's not a get rich quick scheme.
Sure. Sure. It's interesting. That's probably the number one answer that I get from people that I talk to, about the
Mhm.
myths. So before I ask you the last question here, Sharon, how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you online? How do they reach you?
The best way is to go over to the blog, the
Okay.
Louisville Gals Real Estate blog. And from there, there's a link off to the podcast, which is Let's Talk Real Estate Investing, if you just want to go straight to Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
But they can also send me an email at sharon@sharonbornholt.com,
Okay.
and I'll be happy to respond. But the blog it has links off to everything they need. Rufus, I have over 900 pieces of content on that blog.
That is crazy. You're a veteran.
It's crazy.
You're a veteran. Okay. Okay. You're not going to ever get rid of me because I got to go to your podcast class. I mean, I'm only at 40 or something. You have 400. But anyway, that's for another time, another episode. So here's the question. So the name of the podcast obviously is Unstoppable REI. And the reason why I named it that is because if you Google the term real estate investor failure rate, you'll see that 95% of real estate investors fail. I mean, that's a very big number. And I wanted to talk to successful, like the top 5% of the investors around the country to find out, what did you do to succeed in an industry with such a high failure rate? So I've got two questions, kind of two-part. One, how would you define the word unstoppable? And then two, what are you doing specifically to make yourself unstoppable in this industry?
Well, I think unstoppable is somebody that just never gives up.
Okay.
I think you just, in spite of whatever roadblocks come up, you just don't give up. But to answer the second part of the question, you've got to be a lifelong learner.
Okay.
And you have to learn to pivot when the market changes.
Nice.
Like I said, in 2008, I was rehabbing houses. And when a retail buyer could not get a mortgage,
right,
nowhere, I just pivoted and became a wholesaler.
Gotcha.
So I had contacts in the business. So, I was 10 years in. I had to stop and do math. 10 years in. So I knew people to call. So I was able to pivot. But people say, oh, the sky's falling, interest rates are going up. Hey, I had an old friend who's probably in his 80s now. And he said, I've made money when interest rates were 17%. And
Wow.
I've made money when they were 3%. I just did it differently.
You know what? And that's really key. And you got to be around people like that, because it just helps you to have a different perspective, because you hear so many people talking about whatever the market is, a buyer's market, seller's market, what's the interest rate. And really, like you said, it doesn't matter. You just need to know, you just need to have the right knowledge to operate in that particular, environment, but you still can. But I love that. Well, listen, Sharon, I really appreciate your time. This has been great. I would love to talk with you again. Hopefully this won't be the last time we talk. So
definitely not.
Okay, cool. Well, I got you on camera saying that we can talk again. So we'll set that up. So thanks again for your time, and you have a great rest of your day. We'll talk again real soon. Okay.
Well, thanks for having me, Rufus.
You're welcome. Take care.